Could you, Jack? So one of the most, not fascinating, but one of the most exciting details of the Khans is just how good warriors they were. So could you commit a minute or two to how
Yes,
good they were on horseback, and then
yes.
militarily how they managed to conquer 100 million people with 100,000 warriors? And I know this is something that books can be committed to, but just like the cliff
Right.
notes, I'm sure it's something off the top of your head.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think people often want to find the one thing. And they say, oh, it's the bow and arrow. Oh, it was what they call the Parthian shot, the ability to shoot forward and then to shoot in reverse. It's very unusual in the world. Yes, but they were by far excellent marksmen. They had these bows that were made with incredible accuracy, great technology behind it. They had all of that. But other people also could do that. These weren't unique. I think it's more the social organization and the way of life of these people that they grew up on a horse. You know, even today, the most among Mongolians, they don't want to walk 20 meters. You know, if they could get on the horse and ride to 20 meters, they want to get on the horse, you know. And you can see they can do everything on a horse. I mean, out in the middle of nowhere, and I see somebody out there with a pair of binoculars standing up on the back of a horse, looking around. I think, what are you looking for? There's presumably for animals, but I know also they look for other things too. You know, and it's I, it's just amazing what they could do on a horse. But they grow up, so that skill. It's like the horse, the bow and the arrow, and the man are one thing. That is one piece. It's almost like a one-man tank coming through, you know. And you look at other people in the world, they had excellent bows and arrows, very good but you look at the European way of fighting, first of all, only aristocrats had horses. And even they mostly used it for hunting and for these jousting. And they weren't out there fighting, really. They were out there parading around on their horses. So they come to war. I did, if the people with the bow and arrow, it's not the guy on the horse. He has a sword or a spear or something that he's going to use very dramatically, and they're going to bring prisoners. He's going to whack off head. You know, it's more show than anything else. The cavalry in Europe was no formidable force, and the people, the artillery, the bow and arrow people, they would be brought out usually in a wagon, the back of, and they had to dismount even if they were on a horse. They had to dismount in order to shoot. So it's a whole different. The Mongols, they're racing in, they race in, they race in, they race in, firing, firing, firing. They turn and race out, firing, firing, firing. It never stops. But they had also this solidarity of group that Chinggis Khan created. You know, with his laws, you never leave behind a Mongol. Never, never. You know, and so there's this great solidarity among the soldiers. And also, all the laws must be discussed with the soldiers. They understand the strategy that you're going for. And they had to memorize many of the laws in a poetic form that they had to memorize. So they were more respected in a certain way, and they were expected to have 100% obedience. And they did not fail. If they're ordered to do it, they do it. You know, when they got to the castle in Alamut in northern Iran, where the assassins lived, the cult of the assassins, nobody could scale that mountain. I mean, it was a sheer cliff all the way up to their fortress. No one had been able to scale it. And the Mongols arrived, and Huligu was commander, and he said, okay, scale the mountain. They did. They scaled it on the most inaccessible side of all, that no one was expecting anyone to ever even try, and they overcame the cult of the assassins. Yeah. So the Mongols were quite dedicated to their task. They fulfilled it. You know, Genghis Khan always said, you know, your yes is your yes. And it's absolutely had to be. You said yes, then you had to do it. No excuse. And so they had this sense of military discipline, and yet they were participating in the whole thing. They knew that at the end of the day, they were Mongol, and when they won, they were still better than the people they had conquered. They weren't going to have to kneel down before some foreign prince. They weren't going to have to kneel down before a foreign religion. No, no. They were Mongols, and they had great pride in that. And they could live on their horse for days. And every man had to have 5 horses. That was in their
That's
book.
an
But they had
interesting
to rotate
detail as
them.
well. Something that you don't think of when you think of the Mongols traveling through the land. There's 5 horses
Yeah,
to one
yeah.
man. So there's
Yes.
hundreds of
Well,
thousands
that's
of
why
horses. Yeah.
this is another thing, the Mongol strategy. The Mongols had to send in an advance party well in advance, sometimes 2 years in advance of the army, in order to clear out the people so that the land could just go to grass and they could have pasture for their animals. These were raiding exercises. These were well organized wars, great campaigns, And also expelling the people from the land provoked great havoc. They went to the city, they brought disease, they used up the water, the food. They weakened the city before the Mongols even got there 2 years later with their fat and well-fed horses, So the soldier went out there, but they didn't have to have hot food every day. They could live off of their dairy products, their dried dairy products, that they kept in their pouch. And every man had to have certain things, including a needle and thread. Every Mongol soldier had to be able to sew up whatever had to be sewn up, whether it was his clothes, his boots, or the wounds on his buddy's body. They had to be able to do it. I mean, it was well organized, but so efficient. They did not have to carry any baggage train.
They didn't have supply
As long
lines.
as Genghis Khan was alive. Yeah, no supply line, exactly. The supply line was ahead of them. They cleared the land, that was their pasture. Their animals went with them. They had their food with them. They had their mounts with them for reinforcement. They had everything. So it was a well-organized venture. And I think it was his ability to organize and to inspire his people with great devotion that is the key to his success. Not just any one weapon.